Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Atlanta, where we are bringing you Magic Spotlight Foundations. My name is Monty Devuti, and joining me, stepping in for Maria Bartholdi, who's feeling a little under the weather, is Nick Miller. Nick, thank you very much for stepping up here.
No problem. Good morning. I know no one can replace the legendary Maria, but I will fill in as I can, helping out from the sideboard, jumping into the main booth here today for some exciting standard action.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you donning many hats this weekend, in addition to everything you're doing in terms of organizing feature matches, as well as doing deck techs and all of the sort. And the name of the game this weekend is Standard. Standard is what will be our entire focus, and there's a lot of exciting things happening in the format, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, WotC announced the revitalization of Standard last year and has been gearing up for this for a long time. And here we are. Magic Foundations is here. We have Standard fully powered. And the name of the game is 60 card decks, 15 card sideboards. We've got 50-minute rounds, best of 3 games. The format is rotating. And as you can see, we start with Dominaria United, go all the way up to Magic Foundations, which is why we're celebrating Magic Spotlight Foundations here today.
Yeah, we saw the rotation happen last fall, and the format was really shaken up. A lot of the players, when speaking to them, they were really excited about what the two whammy of Bloomborough plus Dustmorn did to revitalize the format and make a really exciting gameplay pattern. And then Magic the Gathering Foundations, released last year, has really one-upped that level of fun and that level of complexity in the format. Even though it is a core set in a way, it has done a lot for the gameplay.
Yeah, a core set, but a massive core set that injected a ton of fan favorites, new cards, and we have a ton of new decks that are revitalized from that set. And when you look at the Magic Online and the Magic Arena metagame and the challenges and the leagues, you see new decks, old decks jockeying for position each week. 1 week it's Gruul, 1 week it's Esper Pixie, 1 week it's Demir, and that's what you love to see in Standard.
Yeah, I think one thing the Foundations has definitely done by being this standard focused, of course, almost core set, is it has provided not entirely new archetypes, but a few cards to each deck that has enabled new archetypes that couldn't have existed just from that base of what we had already existing in Standard. A card like Llanowar Elf just doing so much for green-based strategies, where previously green was almost an afterthought in the format. It was really all about this Demir mid-range and, you know, Gruul aggro, but it's not really Gruul aggro. It's mono red with the slightest flavoring of green. Now we do have actual green decks making a push here in the format.
Yeah, and not only one, but a handful of green decks. Obviously, Llanowar Elves is super powering a lot of these decks, but you have a wide range of, you know, mono green beatdowns. You have green-white tokens with the Collector's Cage. You have a smattering of them, Golgari mid-range, you know, Llanowar Elves showing up basically all of those decks, but other green cards too.
Yeah, I think that's going to be what we are keeping our eyes on this weekend, in addition to just all the incredible standard action, is exactly how Foundations has affected and changed the format, and what the cards that we are seeing from the set really have that big impact are going to be.
Yeah, and one thing that has surprised me is new decks are still popping up. You know, 2 weeks ago, this Esper Pixie deck basically wasn't on the map. I know Brittany Davis, a couple other players have been championing it, playing it on Magic Online, and now when you look at the metagame, which we will have for you in a few rounds, a lot of players are on this deck.
Yeah, I cannot wait to get my eyes on that metagame and just get a better sense of exactly what the weapon of choice for players this weekend is, as we do have just under 1,500 players this weekend. And let's take a look at what exactly we are going to be seeing this weekend, as we do kick things off today with 9 rounds of Swiss, all of it, of course, standard. At the end of those 9 rounds, all players with 18 or more match points, that is a 6-3 record or better, will be coming back for day 2, where we're going to do it all again. We're going to kick things off just like today at 9 a.m. You will be seeing my face, joined by Nick Miller or Maria Bartholdi, and that will be 6 rounds of Swiss for day 2, which will lead to our top 8. The top 8 is a single elimination playoff, but the most exciting thing I have to say about that top 8 is the fact that this large open tournament is going to be awarding 8 Pro Tour invites. Every player in our top 8 will be getting a Pro Tour invite leading to that Magic Professional circuit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the giant carrot. I mean, of course, $10,000 cash is also there. But the big thing is, and that's what's coming with the Spotlight Series in total, each one of these Spotlight events is going to have a unique first place prize. This week's standard for a year. Take us through what that is.
One play booster case, not box, one play booster case, as you can see from that graphic, that is 6 boxes of Magic the Gathering Foundations, but not just Foundations. That is the most recent set of standard. Every standard legal Magic release in 2025, the winner of the Spotlight tournament this weekend will be getting a play booster case of that. So just a very exciting prize and one that is quite unique. I think that is going to be a running theme throughout the Spotlight series as a whole, is each tournament is going to strive to have its own identity, to have its own unique prize at the top, as well as being these large, exciting open tournaments that do feed in to the Pro Tour.
Yeah, and we have standard releases coming up like Aether Drift, a return to Tarkir, and of course, Spider-Man, the first Marvel standard release coming up at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting year when it comes to not only standard but Magic as a whole, and we are kicking things off at the very start of the year, really, January 3 to 5. We are kicking things off here with Spotlight Foundations. It is going to be an absolute blast this weekend.
Yeah, we're wasting no time. We've got an event all ready to kick off the new year, and what better way than a 1,500-person tournament, roughly, playing standard.
Yeah, I think you could really tell the excitement in the community about a large open tournament like this, being able to compete for meaningful stakes, for Pro Tour invites, a large cash prize pool, as well as that unique prize up top. There's side events going on this weekend as well. There's a lot to do in this hall. But for the players that have shown up for this Spotlight tournament, it is really all about just being able to compete in a large open tournament.
Right, and it's been a long time since we've had these massive open entry tournaments. We've obviously had very large regional championships events, but here we are back again. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to do anything special. You just come to the location and you can play.
Yeah, exactly. That is the big point, is there's a level of engagement required with the game when it comes to the regional championships, is you have to really engage with the game week after week, whether it is in the RCQs or however your path to qualification may be. And for a lot of players, that isn't something that is feasible. So you do see the interest in Magic potentially fall off. But when you do have a large open tournament like this, the requirement is to show up, to make your way here to Atlanta, register for the tournament. And that means if you're a player that is enjoying competition but maybe not finding the time to compete, this is something that you can show up to and just enjoy a weekend of high stakes Magic.
Right. Harken back to the old days of the SCG Tour, open entry every time. You just show up. And that's when you get to see the regional players show up. You know, you come to a city year after year, you get to see these players who show up to the events who've got a lot going on in their lives. You know, they can't qualify for every tournament. They get to come out and battle. And looking at the player list for this event, I see a lot of those. You know, this southern region players showing up I haven't seen in a few years. They're here to battle.
Exactly. I think that is going to be one of the things that we have our eyes on this weekend, is the familiar faces and the new faces. We are, of course, going to be seeing a lot of Pro Tour mainstays, a lot of, especially the North American-based Pro Tour players have made their way here to Atlanta, of course, not missing the chance to compete in a large tournament. But also, as you mentioned, a lot of faces that we recognize from the past, a lot of faces that are new to us that are just looking for their chance to compete, looking for their chance to really get in on the high stakes Magic action. So this is a weekend that is going to be about the old and the new, and I think that's going to be something that's really exciting to watch as we make our way through the 9 rounds of standard today.
Yeah, and that's what I'm excited to see here. Who's the next new players that are going to pop up, shock us, make a name for themselves this weekend? And how about the old guard? Who's going to try to hold the fort and say, no, you have to come through me to win this tournament?
Yeah, we have Hall of Famers here, we have Pro Tour players, and I think it's going to be exciting to see what our top 8 looks like at the end of the weekend, how those Pro Tour invites are going to be handed out. Is it going to be fresh faces that are new to us, but will not be new for long as we begin to see them start their competitive Magic journey? Or is it going to be a lot of that old guard really stamping their foot down and saying that we are still here to compete, we are still here at the top of our game?
Right, and I'm excited to see we have world champions here. I know we have Nathan Stewart here. We have Magic Hall of Famer Pro Tour champion Brian Kibler is here, just to name a few of the big names who have taken down massive tournaments before.
Yeah, and of course, we are still working on getting the matches ready for you, so it shouldn't be too long before we have some Magic to show you. But until then, we will continue discussing this standard format that, as Nick talked about, has been evolving over the past few weeks. If you looked at standard about a month ago with the Arena Championship, it was a lot of Groom as well as Demir midrange. That's not really the case now. Of course, both those decks still very popular in the room, but there's a lot of talks about these other strategies that have been popping up. And let's start by talking about this Esper Pixie deck.
Yeah, this is the new deck. I think this is the talk of the tournament deck coming into the event. All these other decks, I believe, have been stable. People know them. But this Pixie deck is the one that appeared most recently and has picked up in popularity. And it's this moving parts deck with a bunch of little creatures, and then it's bouncing and replaying all these powerful cards, and not only doing a little bit of the aggressive thing, but also some disruption and also some of that late game grind as well.
Yeah, I think one of the very cool things about the deck is it does have a lot of moving pieces and a lot of different angles of attack, but because of the way the deck is structured with the self-bounce angle, it doesn't actually need as many resources as similar decks in the past in terms of assembling a game plan. If you can find one of your pieces and start using it and reusing it over and over again, you can make a lot happen from very little, and that is the power of the deck, is it can utilize its resources to that extreme level.
Yeah, and we've seen decks like this even in Pauper, that come around to these picking your cards up, replaying them, getting value. But this is the first time I've really seen this archetype in Standard. We've seen blink strategies before with momentary blink, restoration angel, that kind of thing. But this is like Pauper level. I'm going to pick this up, play it again, get value out of it, fidget around, do it again later, and grind you out. And we have Nurturing Pixie, we have Fear of Isolation to do that, and then a bunch of auras and enchantments to get value while you do that, and then beat down through the air.
Yeah, typically when you say the words pauper level at a massive constructed tournament in a format like Standard, that's not supposed to be a good thing. But with the power level of the cards that we are seeing printed with these cheap enters abilities as well as these very cheap bounce effects, suddenly it's not just about pauper level anymore. It's about the fact that these are competitive effects. We are seeing bounceable removal, we are seeing bounceable discard, life loss, and putting all of these together in one neat package makes it so it can really keep up with the biggest threats being presented from fully powered Standard decks.
Yeah, and it has all of its basics covered. It has the removal spells for the aggressive decks, and it's got Hopeless Nightmare to attack the mid-range, and the controlling strategies by going after their hand and their life total, putting a clock on them multiple ways, and stripping their resources. So this deck has all of its bases covered, and I'm surprised to see it pop up as it has, but it's also seeing evolution. We've seen the Esper build pop up, but now there's also blue-black ditching white entirely with a little different strategy.
Yeah, and we'll be keeping our eyes, of course, on all of those builds of the Pixie archetype throughout the weekend. And another deck that we're going to be seeing a lot is going to be the red-based aggressive decks, all revolving around this red mouse package that Bloomborough really introduced.
Right. We see a full-blown Boros Mice deck as one of the aggressive decks, and that's leaning into some of the more mouse tribal. You've got, or typal, sorry. You have the land that helps out your mice. You have Mabel, Heir to Cragflame, pumping up your other mice, and then you have the aggressive shell that all these other red decks have. Then you have the mono reds and the Gruuls of the world, which are just playing some of the best mice and then pairing it with good pump spells, good removal spells, and burn.
Yeah, and adding, of course, to that mix is also the Boros version of the burn deck that has been popping up thanks to one of the Foundation's cards, Boros Charm, being reprinted in the format. That is the next level of this sort of red strategy that we've seen, using that mice package, using that burn package, and then topping it off with that big punch of Boros Charm, either for damage to the face or, of course, giving double strike to something like the Surefire Sure Shot. Really just cool stuff happening.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since we've seen a true burn deck in Standard. And if I had to guess, I would say back when War Leader's Helix was in the format, where you could really be an aggressive deck that said, I'm just going to burn you out in the end. And this deck has Boros Charm, it has Lightning Helix, it has a lot of burn that can go upstairs after you get them down like a modern-esque burn deck. You got your cheap creatures, and then you just finish them out with your spells.
Yeah, and again, we are still waiting for the matches to get kicked off, so we appreciate your patience as you bear with us as we yap through Standard and talk about all the exciting archetypes that we are going to be seeing this weekend. There is a lot of exciting Standard action to come, so again, we do appreciate your patience, and we will get you some magic as soon as possible. Now, Nick, let's talk about the Demir mid-range archetype. How do we feel about its position in the format with all of the aggressive-oriented decks that have been popping up recently?
Well, Demir's interesting, and I want to circle back real quick. We'll get to your question at hand here, but when the Arena Championship happened, Demir was the most played deck and was the most popular deck at that event. But at the December Ban and Restricted announcement and the update there, Dan Musser mentioned Demir was the most played deck there, but according to the internal metrics and the online data, Demir is not an outlier in the format. It's not breaking anything. It's not winning at a high enough rate to need action. And for those types of closed, small events, decks can pop up and kind of dominate like that. But when you look at the standard metagame as a whole, the Demir mid-range deck is pretty healthy. And when I talk to players, a lot of the strong players in this field are on the deck, but they're hesitant about it. They're like, I think it's the best deck, but there's still matchups we can't win. There's still draws we can't beat, and I'm not 100% sure on this deck. But when you talk about the Demir mid-range deck, this is your bread and butter, all of my cards are good deck. Every threat I play is strong. You're going to have to respect it. I have card advantage, I have removal, and I can grind you out or beat you down with these really fast draws that revolve around Kaito. And this deck, it's wavered in popularity week to week, but its power level is still there, and it is going to probably be the most played or second most played deck in the field.
Yeah, I think just having that end curve of Kaido and Enduring Curiosity just really does so much for the deck. And they are cards that typically we don't see that power level in Standard, but this isn't a normal Standard format. This is a high-powered Standard format across the board. So it's not really that the deck is an outlier. As you said, it is those cards are allowing the deck to keep up with just how good these other decks, these decks that are able to go faster, go cheaper to the ground, are at maintaining their game plan.
Yeah, and the one thing about the Demir deck that a lot of players mentioned to me is it has this nut draw where you can open the game with the one drop, the Spyglass, or the Siren comes down, attacks. You have the Tapper that comes down later, blanking on its name, the 2/1.
The Drowner.
The Drowner,
yep.
Flood Pit Drowner,
yep.
comes down, taps down a creature. Then you get to ninjutsu in the Kaitu, bring back the Drowner, and you've basically blanked, your first couple of creatures from your opponent, and you've accrued all this advantage. You have all this pressure, and they're fighting back against a Planeswalker and creatures, plus your hand's still loaded from the other cards you have.
Yeah, I think what we are going to be keeping our eyes on is the first few turns of the game are going to be crucial in a lot of matches this weekend between Llanowar Elves, between all of these early aggressive red starts. It is going to be a matter of, one, do the creature-based decks have these curve-out draws where they're able to put on that pressure? And for the more reactive decks like Demir midrange, do they have these stall draws? Do they have these removal spells to really stop that aggressive game plan from taking over in order to enact their own more mid-rangey style?
Yeah, and when I was talking to the Demir players, a lot of them are talking about how there's really two ways to go with the Demir deck. It's got a base. Sorry, we're having a couple of technical difficulties, but we'll be starting the broadcast and coming back here in a moment. But the Demir deck can go one of two ways. You can go grindy, beat the mirror, or you can beat down the aggressive decks.
Okay, well, as you said, Nick, we do have to restart the broadcast. We apologize for the technical difficulties as well as the delay. So please don't go anywhere. We will be back up soon where we will try to get you some standard Magic. See you soon.